our circumstances are in terms of what we're up against. Psychologists are familiar with something called the victimization mindset. That is a race-neutral concept. It's something that happens to human beings in all cultures. And the victimization mindset is one that exaggerates the degree of one's victimhood. It's most common among people who are not victims in any sense that most people would think. It's an elite, it's often an advantaged way of thinking. But you exaggerate your victimhood. The person who is under the victimization mindset tends to downplay even the obvious victimization of other people. And the person under the influence of the victimization mindset walks around constantly offended at their victimization not being sufficiently acknowledged. This is a kind of person. This is not a schoolyard taunt. This is the way that a modern human being might wind up.
What's going on, everyone? Sauce Kenny here today, and welcome to Inconvenient Truths. Today will be Inconvenient Truth about victimhood. And if you know anything about my channel, I am a very big opposition to this victimization mindset that John McWhorter, I think his last name is how you say it, or hopefully I said it right, points out. And I think this to a T. I think a lot of people who they find things, they reach for things where they can say, oh, I'm a victim of this, I'm a victim of that, oh, I'm a woman, that's why I get paid less. When if you look at stats, women are less likely to negotiate their salaries than men. Men will take a job if they believe they can do 70% of the work, while a woman would not feel comfortable applying for a job until she feels like she can do 100% of the requirements of that job. Men are more able to take risk. Most men fail when they start a business, and that's why most men are also CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. But if you're a victim or you're looking for a reason to be victimized, you exaggerate your failings in life, your inadequacies, and you try to tie it to an external factor. And this has been a problem in the Black community, specifically where I'm speaking about. But this is generally why I despise identity politics, because identity is used as a means of victimhood. Now, in this next clip, I wanted to kind of point to Douglas Murray and Vivek, and they had a talk like a long time ago. And don't worry, every video I use in my Inconvenient Truths, the sources are always in the description below if you want to get full context. But I'm just taking snippets that I believe will help make my point. So here they're only talking about how I don't know how to say this word, the religiosity, I squandered that word, the religiousness of this victimhood mindset. Let's take a look.
But we do have this problem, particularly in America, that the seeking of victimhood in our own lifetimes, and you wrote about this obviously in both of your books, but in our own lifetimes we've moved, in America in particular, which is so striking, from a culture of heroism to a culture of victimhood. And if I can lay out very quickly, there's one particular problem in this, in a democracy, which is something which I quote Nietzsche a little bit in my most recent book, in The War on the West. And whenever a student says to me that they're a fan of Nietzsche, I always say, oh yeah, which bits? You've got to think it's worth using carefully. But I used rather carefully Nietzsche's work on the genealogy of morals in my last book. And there's one particular insight of his that really struck me and is pertinent to our situation and to our discussion today, which is this. Nietzsche talks about the type of person who, he says, a person of resentment, who, among other things, and see if anyone can recognize this type in the society we're now in, among other things, tears, he says, at wounds long since healed and then cries about their hurt. Now, Nietzsche says there's one particular problem, which is that the person of resentment needs somebody to stand over their lives and make a correction. But it's not even clear to Nietzsche who that person should be. It's not clear to me who it should be. Nietzsche ends up talking about the person as maybe being a secular priest, is the term he uses, quite an interesting term. But he says that somebody must stand over the life of the person of resentment and say to them at some point, you are right. You have reason to be resentful. There is somebody who has ruined your life. There is somebody who has held you back. The person is you. Now, that is probably the least pleasant thing to hear.
Yeah, most problems is the man in the mirror, the person in the mirror, right? But that's the reality of the situation, right? I do not suffer from imagination, but from reality, right? The imagination is, oh, racism's holding me back. Oh, my gender is holding me back. Oh, I'm a Latino woman. I can't. Like, no, it's you. You didn't want to put the time in, or you didn't want to overcome the obstacle. At the end of the day, I have this concept called "The Obstacle Is the Way." It's a book from, like, Stoicism. You know me, I always find a reference to Stoicism. But Marcus Aurelius, one of my favorite quotes: "You have power over your own mind, not outside events. Know this, and you will have strength." AKA, hey, your victimization ain't helping you. You're doing woe is me, but the energy you're using in your self-pity, you could be using it to actually resolve and correct the problems you're dealing with today, which is mostly stem from you, right? Because who's the most common denominator? No matter what job interview you go to, no matter what store you go to, no matter who you meet for as a dating prospect, you are the common denominator. Therefore, you have the most impact in your life, not external events, right? Not outside events. Even when Martin Luther King was running, walking, marching, they realized what they had control over and what they didn't have control over. They had control of how they responded to the situation that was afflicting them, and how Martin Luther King and them chose to respond non-violently. We want to make our point. We want to make the point that we should be treated as equally as everyone else in our society. Nowadays, what you get now with BLM, the exact opposite. They respond in the worst way. They respond in a way where it'll make the country more racially divided. You're destroying property. You're destroying people's livelihood. At what expense? Especially when they weren't a part of the atrocities that happened to whoever you're rioting for. It's the police station that you had the problem with. If you're going to destroy property, at least destroy the people you have a problem with. But no, you make everyone suffer because of you. You feel like the police is being racially unjust. Why you ain't destroying police stations? Instead of that, you going out looting stores, stealing TVs. How's that helping your cause? It's not. People want to see that and say, "Oh, you're using this as an excuse to rob us and steal from other people for your own personal gain." And this is the problem I have with the victimhood mindset in America today. And this is the inconvenient truth about victimhood. It's always framed in a way that it always gives someone an advantage, right? Oh, affirmative action. Black people need affirmative action. We can't graduate college. We need special placements because we've been discriminated against. But if you look at the time of Martin Luther King was third generation college graduate. So how we went from a culture before the 1960s where black people were actually graduating college and there were multi-generational college graduates, and in the 1990s as well, now into 2020s, we have this, oh my God, I'm the first graduate in my family. How we went from that is a decline in culture. But hey, I digress. This next part is we're going to go back to Josh from the earlier in the video, and he's going to kind of highlight why victimization or the victimhood mindset is so comfortable for people. Let's take a look.
And one thing that I think gets missed is how comfortable the victimization mindset is if you're not a victim. People choose this because it's a way of feeling good in the world. It's not people who are trying to seek power. That's only a small minority of the people in question. It feels good to pretend to be a victim in modern society. I've seen this all of my life. I wouldn't have known what vocabulary to put to it. But even back when I was a grad student at Stanford, this is 1990, May, the undergraduates responded to what anybody would have thought of as a very minor series of discrepancies, Black and Latino and Native American undergraduates in particular. And they chose it as an opportunity to take over the faculty administrative building, and a lot of them were put into a bus and taken downtown and arrested, etc. And I was much less interested in this sort of thing back then because I was trying to get a PhD in a subject that had nothing to do with race issues. But I remember watching this conflagration because I didn't have anything to do that afternoon. And the thing that struck me was that the students being taken away to jail in the bus, none of them really spent any time there, but they're being taken away, the local news is there, is that they were all smiling. And I thought, if this is serious, why are they making all those faces? Why are they joyous? And then some of them were editorialists for the paper, the campus paper, and the next day, a week after, they were writing joyous editorials. And I thought, they're imitating what happened here in the 50s and 60s. But if you look at the black and white newsreels of Dr. King in Birmingham, no one is smiling. So why the joy? And it was the joy because they were adopting the victimization complex, and because they were affluent and fortunate kids, black though they were happy. And you see this again and again. You fast forward.
I agree 100% what he's saying, that it feels good to be a victim in modern culture. Why? Because we don't really go through anything nowadays, right? We live in the least racist time in American history, yet people are complaining about racism the most. I think people in 2020, black people in 2023 complain more about racism than I think even Martin Luther King and them complained about racism. And they dealt with it worse. It's craziness. Why? Because we want to find meaning. I think it goes back to Vivek's point in his books, is that we in a search of meaning, and people, instead of having national pride, it seems we're having sexuality pride, race pride, gender pride. And this is what's going on. And people are trying to wear their victimization on a sleeve. Like when you talk about the stories of how these college students in the 1990s were smiling about being arrested, right? And I think AOC did the same thing when the Supreme Court pushed the abortion debate onto and made it a state issue. She was doing the same thing. She was smiling that she was getting arrested. Why? Because she felt like, oh, I'm standing for something, right? But if you look at the actual pictures, and I think that was a great comparison. If you look at the actual pictures when Martin Luther King and them were getting arrested out of the bus, they weren't smiling because there was a well-informed view that they could seriously get hurt in prison because they were a minority. They were black people, right? That shows the dichotomy. But these people will still claim that they're dealing with racism today at the same level as their ancestors, right? And it was a great point that Douglas Murray brought up in the second clip, is how people will keep scabbing at a wound and cry about how it hurts when they are the one who keep ripping up the bandage. They're the ones who keep bringing up, oh, America was the most racist country in America. Okay, that was the past. What we dealing with the present? You didn't deal with discrimination like Martin Luther King and them dealt with discrimination. You had it better than Martin Luther King did. What are you doing about it now? Stop picking back off their struggle. Stop picking back off your ancestors' struggle. You never personally went through that. And they try to make up these terms like black trauma. Oh, I saw in the movies slaves and I identify with that. How? You have no concept. You have no concept to relate to. It's like me saying I have PTSD because I saw a man die in war and I felt that too. No, you have no perception, no way of comprehending that kind of suffering. And even people in those situations, I like to use Frederick Douglass as a best example for this. They thought they may have been a slave, but in their mind they weren't. They're like, I'm waiting for my opportunity to get free. That's the kind of mindset that freed the black people from slavery, right? Rose up in the Civil War and helped their cause of freedom. Hell, in America, in the North, there were slaves. There were black people that were never slaves. But you want to keep pushing this narrative that every black person here in America is somehow hurt by slavery, hurt by racism. Racism, sure. Slavery, not black and white. Some people might like to make it out to be, right? And this is my problem with Black history. Black history is a politicized concept. It's a manipulative concept because they don't teach you real Black history. All they teach you is a certain sliver of Black history where you're a victim, where you're a slave, where you experience racism. They don't point out the success stories in Black history. They don't point out how ex-slaves died as millionaires. They don't point out how America used to be Black people's greatest oppressor, now it's his greatest liberator. They don't show you that. Why? Because they don't want you to have a holistic view of American history. They want to guide you and put blinders on you to make you focus only on the bad parts of history, which every country in the history has. But hey, anything to rationalize your victimization, right? Your victimhood, right? And that's the inconvenient truth about victimhood. But hey, what say you? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. I hope you like, comment, and subscribe on the video. And I hope to see you on the next Inconvenient Truths. Peace.